Hello, everybody. Welcome for another installment of the amazing interview with my friend Ioana, a really amazing being from Romania, and she lives in Ireland, and she's a traditional healer and a magic woman and all the good stuff. And I'm so happy that I have her here because every time I talk, it's magical. And the topics for today are pretty interesting: heartbreak and tribes and how they're connected. Like I just came to Ireland yesterday and it's so amazing. I was like a complete mess. My life was really difficult. And the moment I got to Ireland and got some sleep, I'm like, I can breathe. I feel totally fine. And I was like, oh, and I did nothing. I just sat in a couch for a day and I'm totally different. I was like, that's the feeling of not just physical tribe, but the energy of being connected. That's something that we're missing. So that's kind of where I want to go and explore what it is, how does it work, how do we bring it into our world, and what do you want to think about it? Hey, hello.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me on again. It's always a pleasure, and I'm really honored and really happy to be here. Yeah, it's a really interesting topic because the two of them they kind of combine, and um, heartbreak and tribe. They're kind of almost like each other's like healing, in a way.
Mm.
And there is a lot about what you were saying, with traveling and with how we feel ourselves in one place, and then we travel someplace else, and then everything kind of shifts and changes according to sometimes the place, sometimes the people who are there, and all of that. And it's I just want to just before we start going, I
Sure.
just
Yes.
want to acknowledge the fact that it's been quite a rough time for many people. Like, I've worked with quite a few people in the last while, and it's been quite a bit of an intense time with a lot of emotions being stirred up, with a lot of old stuff, with a lot of
Mm.
old pains and aches and new pains and aches and the whole
Mm.
thing. So I just want to acknowledge that, and I want to acknowledge the fact
Mm.
that we're living in kind of roughish seas, many of us, not all of us, of course. Thank
Mhm.
God for the exceptions.
Yeah.
I'm so happy when anytime somebody comes and says, "Oh, I'm actually fine," I'm like, "Yes,
Mm.
bless you, stay fine,"
Mhm. Yeah.
or not. But yeah, so so I just wanted to acknowledge that it is a time of, for many people, it is a time of big heartbreaks and of big feelings, and sometimes in the midst of it, it's really hard to navigate, because sometimes
Mm.
we're in the middle of the pain, when we're in the middle of the suffering, in the middle of the, at the bottom of the pit. um it's really hard to see a way out. It's really hard to take distance, or to just to see things from a
Mm.
different perspective. And a lot of coaches and teachers and gurus, they'll say, "Oh yeah, you just have to take distance." But it's not as easy as, "Oh, I'm just going to take a step away from the inside of my feelings." That's not how this works the majority of time for most people. So in those times, and I also want to acknowledge that this is different for everybody. Everybody
Mm.
has their own way of dealing with heartbreak, of dealing with harder times, and with the kind of like the rough seas. And for some people, they just need to kind of withdraw
Mm.
and kind of go in a cave until such time when they are ready to reach out, or to meet people, or to call on the tribe, if you will. And then
Mm.
other people, they just have this need, like they need people around, like they need people to hold them. And then, of course, between these two, there are like as many versions as human beings on this planet. So it's really important to acknowledge that there is no one recipe to deal with this. We're so different. We come from such different cultural backgrounds and historic backgrounds and personal backgrounds. We've been through so many different things in our lives. So it's important, I find, that every person kind of learns to know themselves and learns to know what it is they needed. And
Mm.
sometimes in these times, one of the things that, like, I'm certainly one of those people, one of the things that helps me is changing locations. And
Mm.
sometimes being in a different location, being in another place around other people, even if it's just like one town down the road, it
Mm.
can kind of shift perspective, and it can make things, yeah, it just can give me a new perspective, a new angle on looking at things. And sometimes, like you were describing earlier, just a breather, just to go. And because many times, especially after really rough and long extended periods of roughness, sometimes the 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 easiest thing, that seems the easiest thing, the most common sense thing, is like, I actually need a good sleep, a good cup
Mm.
of tea, maybe a chat. And just to, in Romanian we say, to pull my soul back,
Mm.
to pull
Yes,
my,
yes.
kind of like pulling our
In
souls back.
Slovenian, we have the same, to tie one's soul back. It's in
Yeah.
Slovenia, it's the same
Oh,
thing.
do
Yeah.
you? Oh,
Mm.
nice. Yeah, so it's sometimes that's the best medicine. And then we're like, okay, let's see, how do I do this? Because then you get to kind of just have a breather, and then things don't seem like drowning fully and completely anymore, you know. And
Mm.
yeah, there is so much about it. And but I think the most important thing is for every person to understand and learn to know about how they operate themselves in the world,
Mm.
and what they're, and also these things may change, with time. Sometimes we are used to needing one thing, and like we're used to being in our cave, and then suddenly we find ourselves needing to pick up the phone and call somebody and go like,
Mm.
oh my god, help, will you come
Yeah.
for a cup of coffee, will you,
Mm.
I just need to talk. So
Yes.
yeah, if that makes sense.
Totally, like just that's exactly what it was for me. Like for like a year, I was like, just cave, leave me alone. And then like a month ago, I was like, I want to meet people, like good people, old friends that I haven't met in forever. And just my calling out my friend, I was like, Emmett, look, I'm a Mexican, just come to Ireland, ask no question. He's like, yeah, just come. That was like just knowing that this space, even knowing that was good, and then coming here and just laying in a couch and just doing nothing. But like I thought that healing just kind of happened. Like I could
Mhm.
breathe. It's being around people, and it's having those people in your lives and having a tribe. You don't have to be with them 24/7. Like, having, we don't speak every day, but it's like when you really need someone, they're there. And that's what like the tribe or the community, that's what's missing. And that's what maybe we're trying to rebuild or find, and that's so essential. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's sometimes in some ways I feel like we're trying to reinvent the wheel here.
Mm.
Like we're trying to piece back the communal way of living.
Mm.
And then I was really blessed to have been raised in a time and a place where that was still there, and in Romania that's still quite a big
Mm.
part of things. So like community in that sense of, like when something breaks in the house, I don't look online. I usually ask somebody if they know a plumber, or I'll call my neighbor,
Mm.
or so it's that sense of kind of like being held when something breaks, or when something
Mm.
inside and outside kind of a thing.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so I feel very fortunate to have that as a foundation. And many times in this modern world, I kind of feel a bit of an alien, because of kind of having been raised in a way where I know how that feels. And
Mm.
so, and for many people, it's they're missing something that they've never experienced, you know.
Mm.
And it's really some people try to back engineer, like, oh, we're going to create communities, and they try to artificially kind of bunch people together in a place, and then
That doesn't
all
work.
hell breaks loose. And they're like, oh my god, why isn't this working? Well, because it's not from the inside out, and they're trying to do it
Mm.
from the outside in, right?
Mm.
And I really find that a lot of these things, it's important that they come from the inside out, that they come from this kind of, I always say it's like with the people who catch who tune into the same radio station as you, and
Mm.
I and kind of get it. and not get it as the big universal truth, but get each other in a way that is, kind of compatible. Because there are a lot of things about communities, like about the old way of living, where that weren't so brilliant. So sometimes we think about, we idealize this thing, and it's actually, in tiny communities, everybody knows everybody's business. This can be very good, and it can also be absolutely horrendous, because there is zero sense for privacy or individual choices sometimes, and that needs to be acknowledged as well. And we are in a time when we're kind of, many people are feeling this need for connection, basically, is what it is. Connection with other human beings, and also connection with creator, connection with the divine, because those two actually go hand in hand. So and unfortunately, modern society has done away with a lot of things that did bring that, even if the ways it was brought was not always good. Like, for example, one thing is church. Church used to be one of the, the communal meeting places where everybody was keeping in touch and was checking in, and you could see, oh, so and so is not doing well. I'm better check with on her next week. So that is gone, or partly gone, or because there is a lot of harm that has been done, so a lot of people have turned away from that. So it's almost like many people are kind of like drifting, like pieces of driftwood in the ocean, kind of like aimlessly, and the waves are coming and going, flop flop, and there is this deep craving for connection and for communication and for being held just the way we are, with our little quirks and differences and imperfections and hurts and pains, and and all of that. And I do believe that there is a way, that there is a way to go back to that. That being said, it does require, I feel, letting go of a few things, like for example, I just, hashtag unpopular opinion. I feel, this is just my personal feeling, that a lot of the spirituality nowadays is very geared towards the I. And I found myself saying that, it's not always about the me, it's about the we sometimes.
Yes.
So then when we do think about, okay, let's go into the space of creating, or like bringing back community in a way, there is a part of us that is going to have to sometimes take a step back, and that is the part that where I'm the only one that matters. My evolution, my growth, my, because you can't have both at the same time all the time. There is a time and a place, and unfortunately, this is what I see, and this is how I feel it. Like, I find the spiritual world so geared towards the personal trauma, personal process. Oh, these are my needs, these are my boundaries, and of course they're important. They're 100% important, but that's stage one. That's stage one of the spiritual growth. That is absolutely important. It's important to get to the place where we understand our boundaries, our needs, our feelings, our pains, and everything that we need to be good. But that's step one. And a lot of people I find, I see, are getting stuck in step one. And they don't go to step two, which is like, okay, now that I'm more or less in a stable place, as much as humanly possible, and that being said, I'm going to probably slip at some point. Okay, what can I do to contribute to the we, to contribute to the people, to community, to tribe?
It's funny. I mean, it's interesting, because like I was a complete mess last month. I was like, I can't help, and I was calling some friends, but I was like, look, I need friends who can hold space when I need them, but also keep me accountable. So I was like, I'm going to be a victim. I got to look, it's okay, stay for a day, but not like for a month and just do nothing. Like, come here, listen to you, make you tea, and you can stay here for a few days and then contribute something, and then tell me the truth. It's kind of balance. You need spaces where you're completely accepted and held and just whatever. But then at one point it's like, okay, this is the issue. You want to work through it or what? It's kind of the balance of two that I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of seeing. Maybe that's the second level. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, something along those lines. And also sometimes, like, one thing that I found in my own life when times were rough and when I was coming out from really dark places was and when I got to the point where I was reaching out, I found that one of the best things that worked for me, and again, this does not apply for everyone. One of the best things that worked for me was to put work in for the community, or to do some physical work, with my hands, or with, like,
Mm,
just to basically do something. So not
mm,
so I have this cute negotiation that I do with myself, where I allow myself to feel sorry for myself for a limited
mm,
amount of time. According to the gravity of it, it can be a bit shorter or
mm,
longer, but I always put a kind of time on it, like a little time limit.
mm,
And then afterwards, I kind of just, and there is this sweet spot where if I stay any longer and wallow in that pain,
mm,
it's just gonna suck me in, and it's gonna be like really, really hard and heavy and really hard to come out. So I allow myself, I kind of know myself well enough to understand kind of where
mm,
the sweet spot is most of the time. And then when I feel it, I kind of just get up and I'll cook for somebody, or I'll call somebody over for food, and I'll basically do something for somebody.
mm.
And that will, many times, it will kind of get me out of that space and out of that feeling sorry for myself kind of a thing.
Yeah, totally. Like, and it's like when you do something, your energy flows, and maybe things just heal themselves. It's like I
Mhm.
moved, I came here, and I was like, let's have tea, but let's go for a trip. Let me do something. Let me, do something for you because I'll feel better. Not from an ego, but just let me contribute because, like, if I can contribute, I feel good about myself. I can't be that bad if I can still do something. It kind of build confidence, like, okay. And before, like, oh, I'm fine. I mean, I'm not completely fine, but I'm okay.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
So,
empowering. It's empowering to do something, because if we, like, say, if somebody, of course, and again, this does not apply to the cases where people really, really need sometimes months and months of rest,
mm,
especially after
mm,
severe trauma. Like
mm,
that, we're not talking about those cases, but
that's
in
different. Yeah.
in the, you know for many cases, when you kind of stay there, and then if somebody just kind of does everything for you, it starts
Mm,
turning into this kind of an enabling thing, and it's
yeah.
not empowering, it's actually disempowering.
Yeah.
Because the key is to, for whoever's hurting, to slowly empower themselves to
Mm,
become, and kind of come back and regain the confidence that they
mm.
can actually do it, and they can actually feel a bit better.
Yeah, it's funny again, like, there's like two extreme here. One's like, oh, I'm a victim, nothing works, help me, help me. I'll do like 30 years of healing and still do nothing. And this is not generalization. And the
Mhm.
other, like, I'm a master, I'm a Buddhist master, and I'm so non-attached and like nothing touches me. Like, these are the two extremes. Then people kind of like, but maybe the middle ground is kind of like, I
Mhm.
can just kind of handle it mostly. I will fall, I will mess it up, but even if I do, I'll kind of come back. So we have this. I had this obsession, like, give me the perfect prayer, the perfect method, the perfect initiation. Once I'll have that, everything, it's so ridiculous. But there's a time and a place for that. But maybe quote unquote mastery, kind of brush, weird word, but it's like just having the tools that no matter what happens, you'll somehow get out of it with help of others, with help of community.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about more that. What do you think? Like, you've
Yeah.
been doing it for a while, so you would know.
Yeah, like, I think, and again, it really differs, because for some of us, it is the our for some people, it is their thing to become completely non-attached and ascend and go to that stage of, and then for most people, that's not going to be the case. And I find that, like, what you expressed was really, really good, with this thing of kind of getting having enough tools, and also what I find at the foundation of all the tools that we have should be a connection, a deep connection to the divine, and that deep trust and faith, not the blind faith where, oh, like that joke with the people who were in the floods, and they see the boat, and then they see the fast boat, and then they see the helicopter, and like, no, 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 God is going to save me, and then they die, and they're like, God was like, why didn't you save me? And they're like, well, I sent you a boat, I sent you a fast boat, and I sent you a helicopter. Why the heck did you not take any of those things? So it's this thing of, I'm not talking about that kind of a blind faith. I'm talking about the faith where you kind of feel enough held and supported in all, in the pain and in the dark times and in the darkness, where you can still have a tangible kind of connection, even if sometimes it's very faint, with the light, and out, and that makes things much, much smoother. And then, but that's the foundation, because what happens a lot in the modern spiritual world is a lot of people learn a lot of tools, and they learn a lot of techniques, and they learn a lot of prayers, and they learn all these things, and again, they're trying to build things from the outside in, and then those will crumble. And in really rough times, those techniques won't be enough. Those won't be enough, and all of that won't be enough, because the foundation is not there. It's almost like they built a house and with no foundation. So then when the wind blows a bit harder, it's going to collapse. So, and sometimes those things go hand in hand. Sometimes through some of those techniques, the connection comes, and sometimes some people have that thing where they have to have the connection first, and then they can build on that with all the techniques with ease. And there are, again, so many ways to get there, but that's, I feel, the sweet spot, where the foundation is the personal connection to whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe in, whatever you want to call it, but kind of to have that that solid back. And this is, again, one of the things that was kind of put away as people, first of all, got away from the old ways, and then also from religion in a way. And I'm by no means, I'm not saying that organized religion is, good or bad, for that matter. Like, I know there are so many people that work so differently for everybody. It's just that, again, even in sometimes in organized religion, it's more about the outside and about the shape things have, than about the essence of it, and about what it actually is meant. It is meant to be a deep connection to that to that thing that we cannot explain or describe or put a label or put in a box or fully understand as human beings, yet that feeling that there is something there is a bigger intelligence, a bigger consciousness that, in a sense, has our back. And then on that, yeah, you build your whatever works for you, the techniques that work, the prayer methods and all of that, and those indeed help navigate really rough waters and really rough times. And then kind of in time we develop kind of this it's almost like muscle memory. It's really rough the first few times, and then you kind of find a system in a way, and sometimes that system fails and you have to reinvent it and bring another system altogether, and you're like, oh no. But but yeah, in time it doesn't get easier, but you learn to recognize it faster. You kind of, and sometimes you can even feel things coming on, and that make things a bit, oh, okay, so you can actually prepare, brace yourself and prepare yourself for, okay, I'm going to put my jacket on because the weather's going to be a bit bad.
Yeah. So like that's a good metaphor actually. It's like a practical question. I know it's impossible to answer, but like there's two levels, there's many levels, but at least two levels of like disasters we're kind of faced with, like wars and nature and stuff. And that's the objective stuff. Like there's things we need to do, build communities. But there's like the personal heartbreak stuff and like nothing's wrong, but you're a complete mess. And one is not better or harder or easier than the other, you know? And just
Mhm.
recently I've kind of seen some of my own stuff and then looking somewhere else, like this person just came from war, they're really suffering, I'm not. You start to manipulate yourself, think I should be feeling good, I should be spiritual, I'm a bad person, because you're using spirituality to judge yourself, which, yeah, great, you know. So my
Mhm.
question is like, what has proven, like, for you, what has worked on both levels, like the objective, quote unquote, and the personal? Like what tools or ways or what can we use that might be helpful? Is that
So yeah, so it really depends. Like for example, when yeah, that is really important to kind of catch ourselves, like you were saying, in from comparing ourselves with it could be worse. One of the little tips and tricks and kind of little, what do you call it, kind of like the ways out that I found in my life is, how people sometimes say, oh, it can't get worse. So what I say is, I know it can get worse, I just don't want to know how. So this
beautiful.
is my little this is my little kind of safety net for when things are really really bad, like, you know so so yeah, so one of the things is to kind of really have a, again, deep understanding about ourselves and how we work, and to not bypass ourselves into trying to talk ourselves into the fact that we're fine when we're obviously not fine, you know and
Mm.
then what helps is to kind of go in and see what it is about, because sometimes things happen in our lives and it seems like, oh, but sure, this is not hard and this is not something bad, this is not big, this is not anything. But it's actually not just that we're dealing with. It's most of the times it's connected to other situations that were similar in our lives, and sometimes even stuff that our ancestors went through. So sometimes we
Mm.
do feel the entire impact of all of that, of all the
Mm.
of all those particular flavor hardships that we've been through in our life, and sometimes our ancestors have been through. And then, so when we look at things like that, we can kind of see it's like, oh wait, actually it is pretty rough, because I'm feeling the pain that comes from what I'm going through right now, and from this thing that happened, but also from the thing that happened when I was 5, and then that time when I was 10, and then that time when I was in my teens, and then that time when, and also, my grandma, she used to go through things like these, and then we realized that it's not just a little thing. It's not,
Mm.
and we see how. So I find that one of the things that works is to kind of bring compassion there, and bring love and understanding, and gentleness, and sometimes time. Sometimes things need some time and gentleness, and to be met with love, and not fight, and not, dismissing them. And many times it actually helps, and they actually get manageable if we approach them like that, and not with the fighting thing. And it's very similar
Mm.
to the things outside. That being said, when outside things happen, we do sometimes have to get ourselves together, and get community, and do what's needs to be done. Like, if
Mm.
at floods, you go and you see what you're going to help your neighbors with, or the people, or the
Mm.
community, or there are things where we can prepare ourselves, and create those relationships, and create those communities, and bring together, or be together with like-minded people, for when the outside stuff happens. It's just that one of the things that always um, has helped me, at least, is kind of seeing that it's not just that one thing. It's not just this thing. It's not, yeah. And then the hard times is when things happen simultaneously.
Mm.
When outside and the energy outside is super rough, when there, you know, or when there's wars and trauma, all of that, while other internal, sometimes ancestral stuff comes up, and that can be really, really rough going. And so, yeah, it's, and in those cases, just, I always go like, you know, seek help, seek support, and bring as much compassion and love and understanding into the process you're going through, like, as you can. And when you can't, ask somebody to do it for you.
That's beautiful. You know, it's funny. Like your, I think your thing is called Gentle Healing Way, and it's kind of amazing because you're so gentle and nice, and you're one of the most powerful people I know. Like I know you personally, so like she is gentle because she's so powerful. That's kind of, we kind of miss. Like, you know, people are going, I'm gonna strong, I'm gonna build myself up, and I'll be so strong, and that's kind of really weak sometimes, you know. So you know, so
Yeah.
maybe like, how can we become more gentle and more powerful at the same time? Like, how's that been for you in your journey? How did you become so strong, for Christ's sake, you know?
I actually don't know. And I actually don't feel like a strong person, or like, I don't feel extraordinary or out of the ordinary in any way. I'm just a chick. You know, I've just been completely obsessed with understanding myself and the way human beings tick, like, my entire life. I don't remember any time of my life when I wasn't obsessed with this, and obsessed with understanding how the other world works, and understanding those unseen things. And I guess because I was always a bit opinionated, I still am. I'm
Good.
completely opinionated, you know. In a and I'm kind of coming to it from a different place these days, or at least trying to. But um, you know, I've always been very strong in the way I felt things, and I've always had this very strong sense of, kind of like an inner compass that was telling me, this is a yes, this is a no, and this is, you know, this is what's right for me and not. And I guess the thing is that the more cultures I came in contact with, the more people I came in contact with, the more I learned and shared, and the more interaction and actual connection happened, the more I understood that I actually don't know anything. And the more I understood that there are 40 billion perspectives and ways to look at everything. And this has just kind of, I suppose, made me a bit more, a bit softer, I suppose, and a bit more understanding and compassionate, in the sense of, I really do my best to kind of just meet people where they're at. And I'm not saying some are higher. I hate these kind of like graded your like positions, and ugh, I loathe that. But just, you know, kind of just meet them where they are, from their background, from their, you know, whatever they've experienced, and kind of try to meet. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You know, in my personal life, sometimes it doesn't work as good, and there are people with whom I'm just not compatible with, and I accept that. You know, because not everybody, like, I always say that not all dogs like each other just because they're dogs. Some dogs
Yeah.
simply just don't like each other. They're
And
just
that's okay.
and that's fine. So I always get a kick out of all the people who would like all the people to get along. And of course there is a level where we kind of see past the humanity and look into that spirit thing. And in that place and in that space, yes, everybody's compatible with everybody. And on a human level, sometimes it's like, nah,
Yeah.
and that's okay. You
Funny,
know?
there's this saying that comes to mind. Sorry to interrupt. It's like, you know, like I can love everybody, but I don't want them sitting at my table. Like I can love people who have hurt and would manipulate, and like I can love psychopaths from very, very, very far away. And I'm gonna do everything I possibly can. They never ever come close to me or people I love. And like that's the right, but that's probably more like a wise way of looking. It's kind of naive to go, oh, I just love everybody. Yeah, you love the beast. It's like the beast is the beast. It's gonna bite your head off. It's not bad, you know. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a naive way, you know. What do you think about that? That's
Yeah, I
explained.
mean, it is on a human level. So for example, you know, there are things that and people I would never want to let anywhere close to children or people I love,
Mm.
or and then sometimes I've had this experience a few times in ceremony where I mean quite a few times, and where my heart completely opened and I could completely wholeheartedly love those people in a way, in on a certain level as well.
Mm.
That was very hard for my mind to understand afterwards, because I was like, but I actually would do anything to prevent that from coming anywhere near my loved ones. And
Mm.
yet, you know, I could see them from, you know, in a different place, in a different space. And I feel that one of the things that is important, like what I was saying about kind of meeting people where they're at, is also kind of understanding the limitations is a bad word, just things of humanity. Because when on a
Mm.
human level, like, somebody is dangerous to me, like I was explaining this to a client, and this analogy just came, and they were in a really hard situation, and they were trying to bring all this stuff with well, what, you know, what if I maybe they're a mirror and I have to work on that part of on that aggression
Mm.
myself. And I said, look, if you put your hand on a hot plate and it burns you and it starts burning your skin off, what are you going to do? Are you going to
Mm.
ask yourself where the burning is in your soul and what you can do to heal that, or are you going to take your hand away from the hot plate?
Yeah.
And that's the humanity, and that's the common sense human place where, yeah, not all the people are compatible with us, and not all the people belong at the same table in this reality, in this way, in this
Mm.
place, in this
Yeah.
sense.
Funny because just one of the other days, sorry, yeah,
Yeah, go on.
sorry, I had the other day I was like going through a rough time and I was like my mind was about to break and suddenly I had this expansive feeling. I was like, oh, that's my shadow. I created this. And I just understood how I've created all, you know, on some level, all the bad stuff. And I in that moment I forgave them all. But then I was like, yeah, that doesn't mean I'm gonna go and have coffee with them. Like nothing's gonna change. It's for me. That was for me to see it. And I honestly go like, oh, this is I didn't want to face my shadow. So I had to create all this madness so I could look at the part I didn't want. And I just got it for like half an hour and like it went away. But like the purpose is just like to get awareness, not to then act. You know, there's like high level teachings which are beyond the mind. Maybe they're not meant to be acted upon always in 3D reality. And that's kind of maybe where the problem comes, you know, like I'm not Christian, I'm not a teacher, but like Jeshua, Jesus was like very powerful magician, and he could then just decide to love everybody because he didn't care. He was so powerful, he could love everyone, you know. But like until we're there, I'd be very careful with. It's just, you know, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, and also like in those cases, like, yeah, I am in that, you know, like I have that realization, and a part of me is going to want to, you know, make contact with them and all of that, like my soul. And that being said, they might be in a completely different place. You know,
Mm.
what do I do? I go there and I impose on them the place where I am at in my life, or how that,
Mm.
because I might just get a hammer in the head. You know, if I
Mm.
go to the wrong, I go with, you know, in my heart, and oh, you know, and then things might happen. So it's not just a fact, and like you were saying, it's the peace for myself. It's
Mm.
making peace with all those things and all those situations, and understanding how they came to be, and, you know, why, and kind of the bigger picture and the deeper picture. And at the same time, I would never say this to anyone who's going through a really hard time, or especially to a
Mm.
person who's been abused, because that's not where they need to be met. They need to be
Yeah.
met at the human level, where somebody can tell them that was wrong. I'm
Yeah.
sorry I went through that. That was wrong. What can I do to help you make it a bit right?
Yeah, that's love. Like that's real love and compassion, for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so yeah, it's like it's really important for us to acknowledge how there are all these different, it's almost like little parallel universes that live inside of us, and to kind of acknowledge how some of them, yeah, are just, you can't apply the rules of one for the other, and it's as
yeah,
simple.
cool. I think so. This is very interesting. That's just for the kind of finish up. I was like, is there anything you would like to share in these times? Like, it's pretty intense times astrologically. We have the eclipse seasons and stuff and match astrological changes. Like, there's a lot of change. So, is there anything you'd like to share with everyone who's watching this that might be helpful or useful or whatever?
Hmm. Yeah, I suppose um, in these times, it's really like whatever you can do to connect, like
Mm,
whatever you can do to connect into whatever you call it or whatever you believe in, and to connect with one another, especially with the people who are nourishing for your soul, with whom there are these really good, sturdy connections. The people who can remind you who you are, and the people who
mm,
in turn remind who they are in rough times. So I find that in times like these, I personally am very, very selective where I go, who I spend time with, and what circumstances I put myself in, especially when the astrology is a bit rough, and or on the inside things are a bit raw. So I'm really careful with where I go, what I do, who I talk to. And it's almost like this sense of protection, but not the, oh my God, I'm not going to let anybody close, but in the
mm,
sense of, no, 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 this is very raw. So it's,
mm,
like a baby, like it needs
mm,
protection from the elements, from the storms, from, from energies that are not conducive. So I would say connect as much as you can into creator and creation and all of that, and kind of like within yourself, connect into yourself, into your body, anchor as much as you can into your body, in nature if you can, if it's available. um, but even if you have a potted plant at home, that's also enough. It doesn't have to be fantastic, it doesn't have to be extraordinary, it doesn't have to be, the middle of a virgin forest. It doesn't have to be that. It's sometimes as simple as a tree in the park or feeling the grass under your fingers.
mm,
So connection to creator creation, connection within, especially into the body and to the body's needs, um, connection to nature, and
mm,
connection to one another. So I
mm,
suppose, and again, all this being said, minding our own needs and how we operate in times like this. So it's yeah, that I found helps a lot. And I also find that it's really needed these days. So
yeah.
in a world that is so geared towards separation, in a world
Mm,
that is so geared towards pointing fingers to
mm,
people who look different or talk different or think different than us, in those moments when there is the most kind of like separate or momentum for separation, see what you can do for connection.
mm,
And yeah, because it's so precious. And then the ground becomes solid, then your foundations become strong, and then when the wind comes, it's not going to tip your house over, because there
yeah.
are a lot of other people who are holding it up, and it has a good foundation of connection and of faith and trust, I suppose. So yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Thank you. So just to kind of finish up, tell us what you're doing, because you're doing some really intense work that few people would go, maybe a lot of people would require that at this point. So just for people who don't know, if you can tell us what you're doing, who you're working with, so people can find you, because you're good at it. And I know you, and I would recommend you. So just, what is it that you do?
Oh, thank you. So lately I've been doing quite a few one-on-one sessions. I find that there's a big need for people to connect one-on-one and to find this kind of like, just connection. So I work a lot through sacred songs. I work through prayer. I work, just through connection. It's like, it's always really hard for me to describe what I do. I'm just like, look, if you think this, if you feel like this feels good, just give me a call, and we can see if we're good, if we're a good match. But I do, one of the things I really love right now is I'm doing this group for practitioners, for people who are working in the spiritual world and who are kind of like being called to be on this, in this work and on this path. And it is absolutely mind-blowing, and I absolutely love it. Like, to bring that kind of a, not a rigid framework, but rather guiding each of them to where their vision is. And not, I'm not guiding it, let me be very, very clear about it. Creator's guiding it, I'm not guiding any of it. But just this, I find this is, it's a completely beautiful experience, and I will do it again, maybe in autumn. And then I do drum building workshops and many healing workshops, like healing workshops and healing circles. That's been a lot of that lately, because I feel there is a lot of need. And so there are a few things that I do, but mainly these days I focus on the healing circles, on the healing workshops, and on kind of those mentorships and work with practitioners, and basically doing what I did not have when I was in that time when I would have needed that. And that was the promise I made to myself, that whenever I'm going to be, called to, and maybe ready, and maybe, when the time is going to be right, I was going to do it I was going to do those things that I wish I had back then. And
That's beautiful.
so that, I don't know if any of that made any sense.
Yeah, totally. It makes total sense for me. Like the way I kind of understand it, like I'm doing some things too, but it's like what I wanted to offer to people. It's like to get them in a place where they have a choice and they can start to make different choices, like, because sometimes you're just too messed up, like I was before I met Jeremy. I was like, well, such a mess. You cannot make a choice when you're half dead. Like, that's just crap. I mean, and, so it's like everybody has to be, I would like everyone to have a choice, and then they can choose or not choose, but like just creating a space like that. That's what kind of how I see this.
Yeah. I guess my thing is, one of the things that matters the most to me is creating safe spaces, and providing safe spaces where people can do their work. And for me, that's one of the most important things, to have the safety and gentleness so that you can go deep, because not that just the fact that it's gentle. And the ladies I've worked with for many years, they tease me. They say, oh, you should say the gentle healing way, because sometimes it can be a bit rough because of the depth of it. And they tease me about it, and we always laugh about it. And they're like, oh yeah, we went fluffy again, huh? So they always tease me about it. But so the thing about the gentleness and the safety, it's not about taking away the depth of the work. It's about creating a space where the work can be done in the most non-traumatic way possible. Creating that sense of safety and being held and common sense and love and compassion as much as humanly possible, as much as I can. Some people can do it way more than me, but the way I can, I try to do that as much as I can, so that people feel held and safe enough to do whatever it is that they need to do to come out of whatever they need to come out of and heal whatever they need to heal.
That's beautiful. I think that's a good way to finish. So if you're interested, contact Ioana and see where this will take you. Thank you so much, Ioana. That was a pleasure. We'll do more. I think that's a little shorter one just to get people a teaser and see what happens after the eclipse and the new world and everything and whatever's coming up. So
Oh yeah. Thank you so
okay.
much, Samo, for the invitation.
Thanks a million. And we will definitely do some more soonish.